Do you have any idea what the first Black author novel was to become a bestseller in the United States? Back to another episode of We Love Your Black Ass. I'm Keela Vaughn, and this Black Future Month, we are talking about all things Black literacy, literature, media, authors, and writing. On today's episode, I would love to dive into what is the first novel by a Black author to be considered a best-selling novel in the United States. And if you didn't know, that book is Native Son by Richard Wright. Native Son follows Bigger Thomas, a Black man growing up in Chicago in the 1930s whose life is shaped and ultimately destroyed by poverty, fear, and systematic racism. The novel argues that a racist society creates the violence that it also condemns, exposing how oppression limits choice, humanity, and freedom. Native Son was published in 1940, and at the time of its premiere, it sold over 215,000 copies, which was a really huge deal for any book at the time, but especially a novel written by a Black man. Native Son was the first novel by a Black author to be selected for Book of the Month Club, which was the mainstream pipeline to national bookseller at the time. Through the Book of the Month Club, this book was able to reach white middle-class readers who otherwise would have never stumbled upon this book on their own or even taken a liking to it. Richard Wright wrote Native Son during the Great Depression. At the time, Chicago was deeply segregated by housing, labor, and policies. Black migration had really shaped the way that the North was because so many Black people were migrating from the South to the North. And it's important to know that at this time, racism in the North was really being minimized because of the extremities of racism in the South. When people were moving to the North, or before they even had moved there, the narrative was, oh, it's not that bad over there, which was really minimizing the impact that racism still had on the lives of Black people who lived in the North. Something that's special about the book Native Son, and if you ever read it, I'm sure you'll agree, this book did not set out to make the main character, whose name was Bigger Thomas, a likable person at all. It definitely kept it very raw, honest, and truthful about the reality that was a lot of Black men who were struggling against their identity, a system that didn't like them, poverty, etc., etc. So it's not like his character was dressed up anyway. His character was actually really hard for a lot of people to digest, even Black people. In the book, he's angry, he's fearless, he's impulsive, and even violent. But something that's special about the book Native Son is that Wright argues that it is not a person's innate nature to be this way, but the conditions in which a person is born that makes them this way. This is what we call literary naturalism. Literary naturalism considers all of the conditions that shape a character. What is this character being made up out of? In this case, Richard Wright was setting out to prove that Black violence and Black aggression is a social construct more than it is a natural one. People aren't just born violent because they're Black. It's also important to note that this book argues that free will is really not possible under certain systems. And if it is possible, it's limited under oppressive systems. So where people think that a lot of people might have choice to not be a certain way, Native Son really forced its readers to think about how many choices are actually not available when you are born into a society that is already planning on you failing. Wright is famously quoted as saying he wanted to write a book that white people could not look away from, and I believe he did just that with Native Son. Many white readers were disturbed, angry, and even offended, but they read it anyway. And that discomfort is exactly why this novel really matters. Later on, Native Son will go to become a Broadway stage play, a film with Wright himself playing the main character, Bigger Thomas. And also from this, the FBI started to monitor Wright. And it's important to note that a lot of Black authors were monitored at the time by the FBI. And I actually might do a totally different episode on that. This novel has become a staple in universities, political debates about race, and it became a staple of conversation for Black radical thought in the 20th century. James Baldwin is famously cited as critiquing Native Son, arguing that it limited Black humanity by focusing on Black rage, but even Baldwin had to acknowledge that it was a historic necessity. If you've never read the book Native Son by Richard Wright, if not this Black History Month, I do encourage you to read it this year. Please put it on your TBR. If there's anything that you would like to add about this novel, anything that I missed, then please feel free to comment below. Thank you so much for engaging with this video. Like, comment, and sharing as you see fit, and I will see you next time on We Love Your Black Ass. Bye!